Beer here back in the Fantasy Bar, week 15 on tap. 6 of my favorite guys ready for you to go on FanDuel and DraftKings, including my favorite value at the wide receiver and tight end position, a workhorse running back that we are getting a major discount on, and ways to get different in one of the most popular games on the slate. Who we talking about? Only one way to find out. It's time to belly up to the Fantasy Bar. Welcome in, guys. Week 15 edition Beers Daily Fantasy Six-Pack. Good to be back once again in the friendly confines here of the Fantasy Bar with 6 of my favorite plays for you for the Week 15 main slate on FanDuel and DraftKings. Thank you, as always, for stopping by and checking out today's video. Before we get into the plays for Week 15, the housekeeping first thing, most important thing, that thumbs up button. If you enjoy the content, all we're asking in return, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel. Check out scoresandodds.com/beer along with our props and pick'em package. If you haven't checked this out yet, fantastic. Guys have been crushing it with this thing. If you love betting props, check it out. That link in the description of the video. All right, let's get into the plays here for Sunday's main slate. Let's start at the wide receiver position with Rashee Rice of Kansas City. So you've seen Rice in here quite a few times, but I'm going to go right back to the well here on him. Price is still not where they should be on Rashee Rice. To me, one of the best values. A value doesn't always have to be a cheap play. A value can be a guy I think is underpriced, and he's been the best Kansas City pass catcher, even above Travis Kelce here of late. Season high, finally, 82% route participation last week, so no longer playing the 50, 60%. We're getting a near full-time Rashee Rice here, and he has turned this in to fantastic numbers. 29 targets over the last 3 games, 23 receptions over that same time frame. Now, New England, good matchup here for wide receivers. We're talking bottom 12 in receptions, touchdowns, and fantasy points allowed. I think Rice continues to tear it up here in his rookie season. All right, let's go to the other side of the game with some correlation and a discounted workhorse. We're talking Ezekiel Elliott of the Patriots. So last week, you can believe the results, you cannot believe the results, but here are the facts. We are getting a guy that's going to get the ball an absolute ton, under 6,000 on DraftKings, under 7,000 on FanDuel. Cash games, one of the best options, the safest options as far as touches go. Tournaments, we can find ways to get different. If Ezekiel Elliott's going to be popular here, 30 opportunities. We don't say that very often about many running backs in the league. 26 per game now over the last couple. Ramondre Stevenson looking very iffy to play here once again this week. So Zeke should control this backfield again this week. Now the matchup, not the best matchup in the world, but also not the worst matchup here. Kansas City, 12th most rushing yards allowed to the running back position. And we know with the quarterback situation and Bailey Zappi, they're going to dump the ball off to Zeke. They're going to find ways to get the ball in his hands. You look at the wide receiver core, they're in New England. Zeke, maybe the best playmaker they have even at his elevated age. So add it all up, too much volume here to ignore Ezekiel Elliott, one of the best options here at running back in week 15. All right, up next with some value at tight end with Chiggy Okonkwo of Tennessee. So great spot here to save some salary at tight end. There are some elite names that you can certainly go to this week, but Okonkwo's role continues to grow. Will Levis riding high after that big win in Miami here. We haven't seen a blow-up game yet out of Okonkwo, but I think it's coming sooner rather than later here. We have gotten a nice consistent floor here, 40 or more receiving yards in 3 straight games, 5 or more targets in each of the last 3, 6 targets in each of the last 2 games here, and no team been targeted more by opposing teams with tight ends than the Houston Texans, giving up the most receiving yards on those targets, 3rd most DraftKings points. I think Okonkwo in a spot, he finds the end zone, continues to get these targets. I think a big day and pays off that $2,900 salary very, very easily. All right, let's get some value at the wide receiver position next with Jaden Reed of Green Bay. So Packers dealing with a lot of injuries in that receiving core. We got Christian Watson likely going to miss again. We got Wicks also hurt here. Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon questionable. So a lot of injuries and questions here in Green Bay, but the answer to me is Jaden Reed. This guy just has a nose for the end zone, has scored touchdowns now in 4 of the last 5 games, 15 or more DraftKings points over that same time frame, and great matchup here. Tampa Bay has really struggled. Now, it's been more of a struggle with the big perimeter #1 receivers, but 3rd most receiving yards overall to wide receivers, 4th most DraftKings points allowed to this position. Jaden Reed, too cheap, the injuries piling up. I think he has another big role in the passing game and in the running game once again here in week 15. All right, let's go to one of the games I think is going to be very popular this week with Washington and LA. Let's start on the Washington side with quarterback Sam Howell. So this is one of those arguments, real life quarterback versus fantasy quarterback, and the real life Commanders fans probably not real thrilled with Sam Howell as they're not winning many games. But as fantasy players, we love what this guy is doing with his ability to run the ball and put numbers on the board. They're throwing the ball an absolute ton. That's led to 5 straight games of Sam Howell topping 20 DraftKings points. We've seen the ceiling already. We know this guy has upwards of 30, 35, potentially 40 fantasy point upside. And this matchup here is one that he can exploit. Rams 8th most fantasy points allowed to this position, 2nd most rushing touchdowns allowed to quarterbacks. And Howell really been punching him in on the ground, 4 rushing touchdowns for him over the last 3 games. So a lot of people going to look at Matthew Stafford. Let's flip it around, look at the other side here with Sam Howell. All right, it's time. Take a look at my favorite play for week 15. Before we do that, let's continue our Beast of the Week contest. Easy to play. All you got to do, click that thumbs up button, then head to the comment section and guess fantasy points on FanDuel this week for my favorite play of the week. Whoever's got the closest guess, we're going to give you an absolutely free month of RotoGrinders Premium NFL just for hanging out here in the fantasy bar. All right, let's wrap this baby up with my favorite play for week 15. You know, Matt's the Beast of the Week. All right, Beast time. So you know we're going to the Rams. You know we still owe you a running back. We are rolling with Kyren Williams of the Rams, this week's Beast of the Week. So as we pointed out with Sam Howell, I think a lot of people are going to look at Stafford, Puka, Kupp, and I can't blame them. I have no issues with that play. This Washington secondary been absolutely horrendous, historically bad here. But let's not forget they've not been very good against running backs either. And if we can get some leverage here, and it's certainly showing that way in early ownership projections, a lot of ownership on Stafford and the receivers, barely any ownership here on Kyren Williams. And this guy's been right there with a Christian McCaffrey and that level of running back and how good he has been. Price on DraftKings just is not at that level. So really want to get some leverage here and go with the running game here with Kyren Williams. Now don't take this the wrong way. This is leverage. I'm going to have some passing game for the Rams as well. In fact, I think every one of my lineups this week will have some sort of exposure to the LA Rams here. But Washington against running backs, bottom 10 in fantasy points allowed to this position. When he's been back healthy here, we're talking over 25 opportunities a game for Kyren Williams. We know very involved on the ground and through the air, and averaging over 26 DraftKings points per game over his last 3. The thing that makes that most impressive is the teams that he has done it against. 2 of those 3 teams, Cleveland and Baltimore, fantastic defensively, especially against running backs. And now you give him the Commanders here at home. I think Kyren goes absolutely nuts here, breaks the slate. Kyren Williams, easily my favorite play on the board in this week's Beast of the Week. All right, guys, that'll do it for week 15 here in the Fantasy Bar. As always, any comments, questions, or feedback, feel free to hit me up in that comment section right below the video. Don't forget, fantasy points for Kyren Williams on FanDuel for your shot at a free month of RotoGrinders Premium NFL. You can follow me on Twitter over at BeerMakersFan and check us out over on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio this week. STL Cardinals and myself hanging out talking about all the games 6 to 9 Eastern. Fantasy Sports Radio over on SiriusXM. For RotoGrinders.com, I am Beer saying salut, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. Best of luck this week, and we will see you next week.
Hey, thanks for checking out our videos. If you want more expert advice on DraftKings, FanDuel, or any other daily fantasy sports, make sure you check out the current videos playlist.